The house felt like a tomb at 3 in the morning, and I was its restless ghost, padding through rooms that once felt like home. Trevor McKinnon, 50 years old, successful restaurateur, and apparently the biggest fool in New England. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd spent 25 years perfecting the art of hospitality, while my own wife treated our marriage like a hostile takeover. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stood in the hallway outside Nadine's locked office, listening to her giggle into her phone like some lovesick teenager. The sound made my skin crawl. This was the third time this week I'd caught her whispering sweet nothings to someone who definitely wasn't me. The woman who hadn't laughed at my jokes in 5 years was practically purring behind that mahogany door. "Oh, Sean, you're terrible," she cooed, her voice carrying that breathy quality she used to reserve for me. "I can't wait until tomorrow night. The property should be completely private by then." Sean Dorsey. My former friend, my former business partner, and apparently my wife's current obsession. The same Sean who'd borrowed money from me last year to expand his construction business. The same Sean who was supposedly engaged to some sweet kindergarten teacher named Amy. I pressed my ear closer to the door, my restaurant-trained hearing picking up every damning word. "Did you bring the champagne last time?" Nadine asked. "I found the cork in my purse and almost died when Trevor asked about it. I told him it was from the office party." "What office party?" Nadine worked alone most days, selling overpriced houses to people who couldn't afford them. She was good at it too, had a talent for making people believe they deserved more than they could handle. Apparently, that included herself. "The contractor said the heating system should be working by next week," she continued. "We won't have to use those awful sleeping bags anymore. Though I have to admit, roughing it has been kind of exciting." Sleeping bags, champagne, a property with a new heating system. The pieces clicked together like a perfectly timed kitchen service. Sean's company had been renovating the old Morrison place on Elm Street, the Victorian that had suffered fire damage last spring, the same property Nadine had been trying to flip for months. I backed away from the door, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors I'd paid for with 16-hour days and aching knees. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 2 decades, staring at my hands. These hands had built an empire from a single failing diner. They'd kneaded dough at 4 in the morning, counted receipts until my eyes burned, and held Nadine through her mother's funeral. Now they were shaking with rage. The next morning, I made coffee and scrambled eggs like nothing had happened. Nadine emerged from her office at 7:30, looking perfectly put together in her real estate armor, navy blazer, pearls, and that smile she wore like war paint. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably whispered dirty secrets to my former friend just hours before. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I replied, sliding a plate across our granite island. "Restaurant business, you know how it is." She picked at her eggs, checking her phone constantly. "I've got 3 showings today and a closing at 4. Don't wait up. I might be late again." "Again?" I kept my voice casual, but my grip tightened on my coffee mug. "You've been working a lot of nights lately." "It's a competitive market, Trevor. You of all people should understand putting in extra hours for success." The condescension in her voice was nothing new, but today it felt like a slap. You of all people. As if my success was somehow lesser than hers. As if feeding half the town and employing 30 people was just playing restaurant. After she left in her white BMW, the one I'd helped her pick out for its professional image, I sat alone in our kitchen, planning my next move. 25 years of marriage had taught me that Nadine was methodical, careful, and absolutely convinced she was smarter than everyone around her. Those traits had made her an excellent real estate agent and apparently a confident adulteress. but they'd also make her downfall that much sweeter. I called Marty, my restaurant manager, and told him I'd be late. Then I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I went through my wife's things like a detective gathering evidence. Her home office yielded the first treasure, a burner phone tucked behind her printer. The recent calls were all to the same number, which a quick Google search revealed belonged to Sean Dorsey Construction. The text messages were a goldmine of incriminating evidence, each one more explicit than the last. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. You drive me wild in ways Trevor never could. The way you looked at me during dinner last week, I almost dragged you to the bathroom right there. This property is perfect for us, our own private paradise. I screenshotted everything, then put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. In her jewelry box, I found receipts from a lingerie store I'd never seen her shop at, and a hotel keycard from the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where she'd claimed to attend a real estate conference last month. But the real jackpot was in her gym bag, a small digital camera with photos that would make a porn director blush. Nadine and Sean in various states of undress, in locations I recognized as the Morrison property. My wife, who claimed she was too tired for intimacy more often than not, was apparently a sexual dynamo when properly motivated. I copied the photos to a secure drive and returned everything to its place. Then I sat in my car outside our house, engine running, and laughed until my sides hurt. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. My phone buzzed with a text from Marty. "Everything okay, boss? The lunch prep is handled, but the evening staff is asking about schedules." I looked at our house, the house I'd bought, the mortgage I'd paid, the garden Nadine had insisted on hiring professionals to maintain, and made a decision that would change everything. "Tell them schedules might be changing soon," I texted back. "I'm about to become very busy with a special project." McKinnon's Tavern had been my life's work for 18 years, transforming from a greasy spoon diner into the town's premier dining destination. The lunch crowd was in full swing when I finally arrived, and the familiar chaos of service felt like stepping into a warm embrace. This was my kingdom, my refuge, and apparently the only honest relationship left in my life. Marty Rodriguez looked up from the pass as I walked through the dining room, his weathered face creasing with concern. Ex-military, loyal to a fault, and blessed with the kind of intuition that made him invaluable in both war zones and restaurant management. "Boss," he said, sliding a fresh coffee across the stainless steel counter, "you look like someone pissed in your cornflakes." Something like that. I took a long sip, letting the caffeine work its magic. "Marty, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." "Always am." "Have you seen Nadine around town lately? Maybe somewhere she shouldn't be?" Marty's expression darkened. He'd never liked my wife, though he'd been professional enough to keep his opinions to himself. Until now. "The Morrison place on Elm," he said without hesitation. "Saw her car there twice last week, both times after dark. Thought it was weird since that place has been a construction zone for months." "Anyone else's car there?" "Sean Dorsey's truck, big black F-150 with the company logo." Marty studied my face carefully. "This going where I think it's going?" "Probably." I leaned against the counter, watching my staff work with the precision I'd drilled into them over years of service. "How long have you known?" "Suspected for about a month. Knew for sure last Tuesday when I saw them together at the hardware store. They weren't shopping for kitchen fixtures, if you catch my meaning." The betrayal stung, but not as much as I'd expected. Maybe I'd been preparing for this moment longer than I'd realized. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me a month ago?" He had a point. A month ago, I'd still been playing the devoted husband, still making excuses for Nadine's distance, still believing that 25 years of marriage meant something. "I need a favor," I said. "Name it." "Tonight, after service, I want you to take a ride with me. And Marty, bring your camera." The afternoon dragged by with agonizing slowness. I went through the motions of running my restaurant, checking inventory, reviewing schedules, tasting the evening specials. But my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about Sean, about the years we'd spent as friends and business partners before his ego got too big for our small town. Sean Dorsey had been a decent guy once upon a time. We'd started our businesses around the same time, him with construction, me with the restaurant. We'd helped each other out, shared a beer after long days, even vacationed together with our wives. But success had changed him, made him hungry for more than he'd earned. He'd started cutting corners, overcharging clients, and treating his employees like disposable assets. Our friendship had ended 2 years ago when I'd refused to recommend his company to a friend after hearing about his shoddy work. Sean had accused me of jealousy, of trying to hold him back out of spite. The irony that he was now literally screwing me over wasn't lost on me. At closing time, Marty and I drove to Elm Street in my Honda Accord, nondescript, reliable, and perfect for surveillance. The Morrison property sat on a large lot, surrounded by mature trees that provided excellent cover. The Victorian house itself was a beautiful restoration project, or would be when Sean's crew finally finished butchering it. We parked across the street and waited. At 9:15, Nadine's BMW pulled into the driveway. At 9:20, Sean's truck followed. They didn't even try to be discreet, walking into the house together like they owned the place. Motion sensor lights just came on upstairs, Marty observed, adjusting his camera lens. Second floor, corner room. The master bedroom, I said, my voice flat. Of course it is. We waited another hour, documenting their arrival, the lights moving through different rooms, and finally capturing them in a passionate embrace on what appeared to be a makeshift bed visible through the uncurtained windows. Marty's military training with surveillance equipment proved invaluable. The photos were clear, detailed, and absolutely damning. When they finally emerged at 11:30, disheveled and laughing like teenagers, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, I'd moved past that. This was calculation, pure and simple. The methodical planning that had made my restaurant successful was now focused on a different kind of service. Got everything we need, Marty said, reviewing the digital images. Question is, what are you planning to do with it? I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, my mind already working through the possibilities. I'm going to destroy them both, systematically and completely. But first, I need to know exactly how deep this goes. The next morning, I played the devoted husband again, making breakfast and asking about Nadine's evening. She spun an elaborate tale about showing a property to out-of-town clients, complete with fictional details about their budget and timeline. The lies rolled off her tongue so smoothly that I almost admired the performance. After she left for work, I drove to her real estate office. Nadine worked for Prestige Properties, a boutique firm that specialized in high-end residential sales. The office was all glass and chrome, designed to impress clients with its modern sophistication. I'd helped her celebrate when she'd landed the job 5 years ago, proud of her ambition and success. Now I was here to destroy it. Erica Martinez, Nadine's junior associate, greeted me with the kind of nervous enthusiasm that suggested she had a crush on my wife that bordered on worship. Early 30s, eager to please, and blessed with the loose lips that made her invaluable for office gossip. Mr. McKinnon, what a surprise. Nadine's out showing the Henderson property, but she should be back this afternoon. Actually, I was hoping to talk to you, I said, turning on the charm that had made me successful in the hospitality business. I'm planning a surprise for Nadine, a romantic getaway for our anniversary, and I need to make sure I don't conflict with her work schedule. Erica practically glowed with the opportunity to help plan something romantic. Oh, that's so sweet. Let me check her calendar. She pulled up Nadine's schedule on her computer, and I memorized every appointment, every property showing, every supposed client meeting. More importantly, I noted the gaps. the unexplained blocks of time that lined up perfectly with Sean's availability. "She's been working so hard lately," Erica gushed. "All those evening appointments and weekend showings. The Morrison property has been particularly demanding." "The Morrison place?" I kept my voice casual. "I thought that was still under construction." "Oh, it is. But Nadine's been coordinating with the contractor to make sure everything's perfect for potential buyers. She's so dedicated. She even goes there after hours to check on the progress." "I bet she does." "The contractor being Sean Dorsey?" "Yes. Do you know him? He seems really nice. Very hands-on with his work." The unintentional double entendre almost made me laugh. "We go way back. Has he been here to the office much?" "A few times. Actually, he and Nadine had a long meeting here last Friday evening. They were going over renovation details until almost 10 o'clock. I stayed late to finish some paperwork, and they seemed very focused on their project." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Last Friday, Nadine had told me she was having dinner with a client. Instead, she'd been here with Sean, probably planning their next rendezvous while I'd eaten leftover Chinese takeout alone. "Well, I should let you get back to work," I said, standing to leave. "And Erica? Let's keep the surprise party between us, okay?" "Of course. Your secret's safe with me." If only she knew what secrets I was really keeping. The beauty of running a successful restaurant is that you learn to think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Timing, coordination, and attention to detail become second nature. These skills, I was discovering, translated beautifully to revenge. I spent the weekend planning my opening move while maintaining the facade of domestic normalcy. Nadine fluttered around the house, supposedly preparing for a busy week of showings, while I mentally cataloged every lie, every deception, every casual cruelty she'd inflicted over the months of her affair. Monday morning brought opportunity in the form of our monthly bank statements. Nadine had always handled our personal finances, claiming she had a better head for numbers than I did. Another lie, as it turned out. She had a head for numbers, all right. Specifically, the numbers on Sean Dorsey's bank account. While she showered, I logged into our online banking and discovered a fascinating pattern. Over the past 3 months, Nadine had been making regular transfers from our joint account to a business account labeled Morrison Restoration Project. Small amounts, $500 here, $1,000 there, but they added up to nearly $8,000 of my money funding her love nest. I printed out the statements, highlighted the relevant transactions, and tucked them into my briefcase. Then I made a phone call that would set everything in motion. "Prestige Properties, this is Erica." "Erica, it's Trevor McKinnon. I hate to bother you, but I'm trying to reach Nadine, and her phone seems to be going straight to voicemail." "Oh, she's at the Morrison property this morning, doing a final walkthrough before the contractor starts the kitchen renovation. Cell service is terrible out there." "The kitchen renovation?" I injected just the right amount of confusion into my voice. "I thought that was scheduled for next week." "No, it's definitely today. She's been coordinating with Sean Dorsey's crew since early this morning. Is everything okay?" "I'm sure it's fine. Just a miscommunication about our lunch plans. Thanks, Erica." I hung up and smiled. Nadine had told me she'd be showing properties all day to a couple relocating from Boston. Instead, she was playing house with Sean, while his crew conveniently worked on other parts of the building. The audacity was almost impressive. At 11:30, I drove to the Morrison property with a trunk full of supplies and a heart full of cold determination. Sean's truck was parked in the driveway next to Nadine's BMW, just as I'd expected. The construction crew was nowhere to be seen, probably sent to another job site to give the lovebirds privacy. I parked down the street and waited. At exactly noon, I put my plan into action. The first call was to the health department. "Yes, I'd like to report a possible health code violation at the Morrison property on Elm Street. I've seen people bringing food into an active construction site, and I'm concerned about contamination issues." The second call was to Sean's fiancée, Amy. "Amy, this is Trevor McKinnon, Sean's friend. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm at the Morrison property, and Sean left his wallet in my car yesterday. I can see his truck here, but no one's answering when I knock. Do you know if he's supposed to be working here today?" The confusion in her voice was palpable. "Working? Sean told me he was meeting with suppliers all morning. He said he'd be at the lumber yard until at least 2 o'clock. Maybe I'm mistaken. The truck looks like his, but you know how these construction guys all drive the same vehicles. Sorry to bother you, Amy. Wait, Trevor, what's the address again?" I gave her the exact address and hung up, checking my watch. If Amy was half as suspicious as she'd sounded, she'd be here within 20 minutes. The third call was to my insurance agent. "Hi, Janet, it's Trevor McKinnon. I need to ask you about something. If someone uses my property for business purposes without my permission, am I liable for any accidents or damages that might occur?" "That's an interesting question, Trevor. Are you thinking about renting out part of the restaurant?" "No, it's more hypothetical. Let's say someone was using a property for personal meetings, and something happened. Would the property owner be responsible?" "Absolutely. Any unauthorized use of property creates liability issues. If you suspect someone is using your property without permission, you should document it immediately and contact the police if necessary." "Thanks, Janet. You've been very helpful." I hung up and settled back to watch the show. Amy arrived first, her little Honda Civic pulling up behind Sean's truck with the sharp precision of a woman on a mission. She was pretty in a wholesome kindergarten teacher way, exactly the kind of woman Sean should have been grateful to have. Instead, he was upstairs screwing my wife on a mattress I'd probably paid for. Amy knocked on the front door, waited, then walked around to the back of the house. Through the trees, I could see her cupping her hands against windows, trying to peer inside. She returned to the front door and knocked again, louder this time. The health inspector arrived 10 minutes later, a tired-looking man in his 50s who clearly had better things to do than chase down anonymous tips. He met Amy at the front door, and I could see them talking, her gesturing toward Sean's truck, him checking his clipboard. That's when Nadine and Sean finally appeared, emerging from the back of the house looking flushed and disheveled. Sean was still tucking in his shirt when he spotted Amy talking to the health inspector. The look of pure panic on his face was worth every moment of planning. I started my car and drove slowly past the property, lowering my window as I approached the group gathered on the front lawn. Amy was crying, the health inspector was taking notes, and Sean was trying to explain why he was at a construction site that wasn't supposed to have any work scheduled today. Nadine spotted my car and waved, her real estate smile firmly in place despite the obvious tension. "Trevor, what are you doing here?" I pulled over and got out, playing the confused husband perfectly. "I was driving to the restaurant and saw your car. Thought you were showing properties in the North End today?" "Change of plans," she said quickly. "The clients canceled, so I decided to check on the Morrison renovation progress." "And you are?" Amy stepped forward, her eyes red but her voice steady. "Trevor McKinnon, Nadine's husband." I extended my hand, noting how Sean wouldn't meet my eyes. "You must be Amy. Sean's told me so much about you." "Has he?" Her voice was arctic. "Because he told me he was meeting with suppliers today. Funny how his suppliers look so much like other men's wives." The health inspector cleared his throat. "I'm going to need to see permits for any food service activities on this property. The complaint mentioned people bringing meals into an active construction zone." "Food service?" Nadine laughed, but it sounded forced. "There's no food service here. This is a residential renovation." "Then why?" Amy said, holding up a champagne bottle she'd apparently found somewhere. "Is there alcohol on the premises? And why does that mattress upstairs have rose petals on it?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sean looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. Nadine's real estate smile finally cracked, and I stood there, playing the shocked husband, while internally celebrating the beautiful chaos I'd orchestrated. "Well," I said finally, "this is awkward." The fallout from the Morrison property confrontation was swift and brutal. By Tuesday evening, the story had spread through town like wildfire, fueled by Amy's tearful account to anyone who would listen and the health inspector's official report about unauthorized activities at the construction site. I played my role perfectly, the betrayed husband, shocked and hurt, but trying to keep his dignity intact. The sympathy poured in from customers, staff, and friends, while Nadine found herself suddenly persona non grata in the social circles she'd worked so hard to cultivate. But I was just getting started. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected ally in the form of Lois Brennan, Nadine's older sister. Lois had never liked me much, thought I wasn't good enough for her precious baby sister, but she absolutely despised Sean Dorsey. Something about him being new money trash with no class, which was rich coming from someone whose father had been a plumber. She appeared at my restaurant during the lunch lull, her silver hair perfectly coiffed and her expression grim with purpose. "Trevor," she said, settling into a corner booth with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "We need to talk." I poured 2 cups of coffee and joined her, curious about what had brought my least favorite in-law out of her suburban fortress. "I assume you've heard about the situation," I said carefully. "The whole town's heard about the situation. Nadine's made us all look like fools." Lois stirred sugar into her coffee with sharp, angry movements. "But that's not why I'm here." "Oh?" "I'm here because Sean Dorsey has been screwing over this town for 2 years, and somebody needs to stop him before he destroys more lives." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Insurance claims, building permits, contractor complaints. "I've been collecting information on his business practices since he botched my neighbor's kitchen renovation last year." I opened the folder and whistled low. Sean's company had a pattern of cost overruns, delayed completions, and shoddy workmanship that bordered on fraud. There were complaints to the Better Business Bureau, threatening letters from lawyers, and insurance claims for damages caused by his crew's negligence. "This is extensive," I said, flipping through page after page of damning evidence. "Why haven't you done anything with it?" "Because I'm a retired librarian, not a prosecutor. But you—" She leaned forward, her eyes sharp with calculation. "You have connections, influence, people respect you in this town. What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we destroy Sean Dorsey's business and reputation so thoroughly that he'll have no choice but to leave town. And if Nadine goes with him, well, that's just a bonus." I studied my sister-in-law with new appreciation. Beneath her prim exterior lurked a vindictive streak that rivaled my own. "What do you get out of this?" I asked. "Satisfaction, and the knowledge that my family name won't be associated with that piece of trash anymore." She closed the folder and pushed it across the table. "The question is, what are you willing to do about it?" That evening, I met with Marty at the restaurant after closing to review our options. The dining room was empty except for us, the chairs stacked on tables and the lights dimmed. It felt like a war room, which wasn't far from the truth. "Lois wasn't kidding about the documentation," Marty said, spreading the papers across a table. "This guy's been running scams all over the county. Look at this. He quoted the Hendersons $15,000 for a bathroom renovation, then charged them $28,000 when it was done. Claimed unexpected complications that weren't in the original estimate." "Is that legal?" "Technically, if the contract allows for cost overruns. But morally, it's theft." Marty pointed to another document. "And this one's even better. He used substandard materials on the Patterson roof job, then blamed the leaks on unusual weather patterns. The insurance company had to pay out $40,000 in water damage." I leaned back in my chair, processing the implications. So Sean's not just an adulterer, he's a con artist. Looks that way. Question is, what do we do with this information? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it and felt my pressure spike. "Stop spreading lies about me or you'll regret it." Some things are better left buried. I showed the message to Marty, who frowned. Sounds like Sean's getting desperate. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. I forwarded the message to my own email, creating a permanent record. And threatening messages are evidence of harassment. The next morning brought another surprise. Detective Ray Price appeared at my restaurant during the breakfast rush. Ray and I had a complicated history. We'd gone to high school together, but he'd always resented my success. Still, he was honest, competent, and had no love for Sean Dorsey after a run-in involving Sean's illegal parking habits. "Trevor," he said, sliding into a booth near the kitchen. "Heard you've been having some domestic troubles." News travels fast in a small town. It does, especially when it involves people making threats. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of the same text I'd received. "Sean Dorsey filed a complaint yesterday, claiming you're harassing him and his business associates." I almost laughed. His business associates? Is that what we're calling adultery now? Look, I don't give a damn about your marriage problems, but I do care when people start making threats and causing public disturbances. Ray leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Sean's claiming you've been following him, making anonymous complaints to city departments, and interfering with his business operations. And what evidence does he have of this alleged harassment?" "None, which is why I'm here talking to you instead of arresting you." Ray accepted a cup of coffee from one of my waitresses with a nod of thanks. "But Trevor, I need you to be smart about this. Whatever you're planning, don't do anything stupid." "I'm not planning anything illegal, Ray. I'm just a guy trying to pick up the pieces of his life after his wife decided to redecorate with the neighbor." "Uh-huh." Ray's expression suggested he wasn't buying my innocent act. "Just remember, revenge is a dish best served through proper legal channels." After he left, I sat in my office reviewing the morning's events. Sean was scared enough to involve the police, which meant my strategy was working, but it also meant I needed to be more careful about my next moves. I called Lois and arranged to meet her at the public library, neutral territory, where we could plan without being overheard. She arrived with another folder, this one containing financial records that painted an even darker picture of Sean's business practices. "Property tax records," she explained, spreading documents across a study table. "Sean's been claiming his business properties as residential to avoid commercial tax rates. That's fraud." "How did you get these?" "Public records, dear. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look." She smiled with the satisfaction of a predator who'd cornered her prey. "But this is the real prize." She handed me a bank statement that made my eyes widen. Sean's business account showed regular deposits from a shell company called Morrison Development LLC, the same company that had been receiving transfers from my joint account with Nadine. He's been using renovation projects to launder money, I realized, taking cash from one job to pay for another, keeping the books confused enough to hide the discrepancies. "And your wife has been helping him, whether she knows it or not. Those transfers from your account, they're keeping his whole operation afloat." I stared at the evidence, feeling a cold fury settle in my chest. Not only had they betrayed me personally, they'd been stealing from me financially. Every romantic dinner they'd shared, every intimate moment they'd stolen, had been funded by my own hard work. "Lois," I said quietly, "I think it's time to escalate this situation." She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, I actually liked my sister-in-law. "I was hoping you'd say that." The plan we hatched was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its scope. Lois would handle the financial evidence, submitting Sean's tax fraud documentation to the IRS and State Revenue Department. I would focus on his business reputation, using my connections in the local business community to spread word about his shoddy practices and ethical violations. But first, I had a more personal score to settle. Friday night, I followed Nadine to what I knew would be another rendezvous at the Morrison property. This time, however, I wasn't there to gather evidence. I was there to confront them both and end this charade once and for all. I waited until they'd been inside for an hour before making my move. The front door was unlocked, a detail that spoke to their arrogance and carelessness. I walked through the partially renovated house, noting the expensive fixtures and high-end materials that my money had undoubtedly helped purchase. I found them in what would eventually be the master bedroom, tangled together on an air mattress, surrounded by candles and empty wine bottles. The scene was pathetically romantic, like something from a bad movie about midlife crisis affairs. "Don't stop on my account," I said from the doorway, my voice cutting through their passion like a blade. Nadine shrieked and grabbed for a sheet, while Sean scrambled to his feet, reaching for his clothes. The panic in their eyes was almost worth the months of betrayal and lies. "Trevor!" Nadine's voice was high and strained. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like my wife sleeping with my former friend in a house I helped pay to renovate." I stepped into the room, noting how Sean positioned himself between me and Nadine. "But please, enlighten me. What exactly is this?" "It just happened," Sean said, his voice shaking. "We didn't plan for this to— Bullshit." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos Marty had taken weeks earlier. "You've been planning this for months. The question is, what are you planning to do about it now?" Nadine had recovered enough composure to wrap herself in a sheet and stand up. "Trevor, we need to talk about this like adults. Our marriage has been over for years. We both know that. Our marriage was over the moment you decided to start sleeping with Sean. What I want to know is how much of my money you've stolen to fund this little love nest." "Stolen?" Sean's indignation might have been convincing if he wasn't standing there in his underwear. "Nobody stole anything. The Morrison Project is a legitimate business investment. Funded by unauthorized transfers from my joint account with Nadine. That's called embezzlement, Sean, and when combined with your tax fraud and insurance scams, it adds up to some serious federal charges." The color drained from Sean's face. "You don't know what you're talking about, don't I?" I pulled out the financial documents Lois had compiled. Shell companies, falsified tax records, insurance fraud. The IRS is going to have a field day with your books. "You bastard!" Nadine hissed. "You've been spying on us, haven't you? Following us around like some pathetic stalker." "I've been protecting my interests, something I should have started doing months ago." I looked around the room, taking in the romantic setup they'd created with my money. "Here's what's going to happen. Nadine, you're going to transfer your half of the restaurant back to me, along with any other joint assets. You're also going to repay every penny you stole from our accounts. Like hell I will. Oh, but you will. Because if you don't, these photos and financial records go to the police, the IRS, and every real estate broker in the state. Your career will be over before you can say ethics violation." Sean stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You can't threaten us like this, Trevor. We have rights." "You had rights. You forfeited them when you decided to screw my wife and steal my money." I smiled, feeling the cold satisfaction of a plan coming together. "But don't worry, Sean. I'm not unreasonable. You can avoid criminal charges by doing 3 simple things." "What things?" he asked warily. "First, you're going to repay every client you've defrauded with interest. Second, you're going to dissolve your business and leave town. And third, you're going to stay the hell away from my wife." "I'm not your property," Nadine snapped. "No, but the restaurant is, and the house, and the car you've been driving to your little assignations." I turned back to Sean. "You have 48 hours to make your decision. After that, I start making phone calls." I left them there, naked and furious, and finally understanding that their actions had consequences. The drive home was the most satisfying 20 minutes I'd experienced in months. But the real satisfaction came on Monday morning, when Sean appeared at my restaurant looking haggard and defeated. "I'll do it," he said without preamble. "I'll pay back the clients and dissolve the business. But I need time to liquidate assets and arrange financing." You have 30 days, I replied. And Sean, if you ever contact my wife again, if you ever set foot in this town again, if you so much as send her a Christmas card, I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd never been born. He nodded and left without another word. Nadine held out for another week before capitulating. The divorce papers were signed on a Tuesday, with her keeping only her personal belongings and a small settlement that wouldn't even cover a year's rent on a decent apartment. She moved to the city the following weekend, her real estate license suspended pending an ethics investigation that would likely end her career. 6 months later, I stood in the renovated Morrison property, now the location of my second restaurant. The dining room was full of satisfied customers, the kitchen hummed with efficient activity, and the profits were already exceeding my projections. Marty joined me at the bar, raising a glass of champagne in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said. "To justice served," I replied. Outside, snow was beginning to fall on the town I'd called home for 30 years. It was a good town, full of good people who appreciated honesty, hard work, and the kind of loyalty that couldn't be bought or sold. Sean Dorsey was somewhere in Florida, working construction for someone else's company and living in a studio apartment. Nadine was selling insurance in Boston, her real estate career destroyed by the ethics investigation and her reputation in ruins. And I was here, in my restaurant, surrounded by people who respected me and a business I'd built with my own hands and honest sweat. It had been a long, difficult journey from that first night when I'd heard Nadine giggling into her phone. But standing here now, watching my staff serve excellent food to appreciative customers, I knew every moment of planning and every calculated move had been worth it. Some people might call it revenge. I preferred to think of it as justice, served at the perfect temperature and seasoned with the bitter satisfaction of a job well done. The last reservation had been fulfilled, and the table was finally cleared.